I messed up my rant. Okay. And fuck. Is it working? Is it finally working? Yes, it seemed to be working. Okay. But is it the right link? Is it really? Is anybody there? Okay, I fucked up. And I fucked up. Because I don't know how this shit works. Oh my god, I don't know how this works. So I've made a new video by mistake. Okay, I am live though. I am not live. I see. Okay, I am live. 3 people watching. All right, started. Let's do this. Okay, let me get out the link. I made a mistake. New link. Yes. I have. Okay, we're gonna start in a second as soon as I send out. The internet's really not good tonight. 4 people watching, excellent. I'll be starting in a moment. Wrong link. Okay. Let's start this. So there's 4 people here. I'm just gonna start. Can somebody confirm sound is good and everything? But is it the right link? Okay. Internet. Let's start this. So there's 4 people here. Okay. Okay. So. Confirm sound is good and everything. Oh, it'll be fine. Okay. So let's. Oh, okay. Hey, man. So a few weeks ago, I've got double sound now. Sorry. Excellent. So a few weeks I did some threads on Reddit, and I did an interview with Tomas that got live last week, I think, on just surviving as a developer nowadays. So I thought I'll do a live stream, talk about that. And see if we can figure out if things are as bad as I suspect they might be, and how to survive nowadays. Regarding this live stream, I'm not a professional at this, and I don't think I want to be, so it'll be a rarity. But I'm sort of coming out of a development break of a few weeks, so I had some time. Let's start in the beginning. So there's a lot of people out there saying when I post that things are quite hard to survive as a developer, as an indie dev nowadays. There's a lot of pushback where people go, oh, but the indies are doing great because AAA is failing. Or people go, that's just bad games doing badly. And all those things are true. But I actually do think that things are harder for indies than they ever were, by virtue of a number of I don't think actually this video will be about game dev being dead. It's that the market's matured. So let me go back in the past. What game will the sailing game is coming next? But let's keep it on topic of development for a bit. So I came out when I started in 2001. There was no. We had a studio and there was no self-publishing. Steam didn't exist. And for 17 years, we tried to survive to the point I couldn't do that anymore. Blah, blah, blah. Old story. But before I went solo, the thing I saw was just how hard it is to run a studio with 20 people, which is not a lot of people, but it's the number you need to make a capable, I wouldn't say double A, but single A or triple indie. You need about that amount of people, in programming R to get a game that's great for 20 hours, has great support, marketing, and everything. And survival was just so hard. There was never any money. We did work for hire. We worked for Sony. It was never easy, and it was never feasible to thrive. And so I came up with the idea: let's just do it by myself because it's easy to feed one mouth instead of 20, and it's turned out to be very true. So that's a valid survival mechanism. Uh, but when I started, one of the things uh, I noticed is when people that I knew that were successful, there were indies that had hit after hit. But most of those were actually quite some time ago. So I'd say pre 2017. Um, but there are exceptional people that are just know how to make great games and will always be successful. Let's not kid ourselves. And they were exceptionally successful. But beyond that was a large measure of studios who just they made games and then suddenly one hit it off and they made substantial money, uh, and then they couldn't repeat that. They would be stuck making two, three, four games until another game made a moderate success, and made money to make more games. And they were also always struggling. There were nobody was driving, Ferraris or Teslas or whatever that didn't exist. So I think part of indie dev, why I sometimes glum, is that it's always like that. There's people that make hits, but if you're not making the exceptional viral hits, it's always going to be a financial struggle. You're always going to be, you know, trying to survive. So that's I think that's no let's get that out of the way. It's never been different from that. It won't ever be different. But I do think the modern times are somewhat different in that. No, well, take for instance, for a variety of reasons, and do please ask questions and butt in if I'm wrong. But when talking, I did this post on Reddit, and I said after Gamescom. So this is, I'll see if I can pull it up, if I can find it, with a couple of things that popped. How do you call it? That I talked to a lot of people at Gamescom, and I made a list of sort of the takeaways. Wow, I posted a lot on Reddit. I'm just scrolling through it because I haven't. Okay, I did that. Oh, Jesus, I'm just scrolling. So I did. I kept Gamescom 2 years ago. Everybody was, hyped about the potential, and last year everybody was scared, and this year everybody was sort of, are we gonna survive? Let's I have to go all the way back to Gamescom, but the list is so. I can't find. Oh no. I should have prepared this. No, I'm sorry, this is bad streaming. Gamescom. I can't find it. I'm scrolling so far back. Oh my god. Fuck it. I'll go from memory. But it was trying. People were trying to figure out what was going on, because there's this overarching, how do you call it, narrative that there were too many games. I think that's been going on for quite a few years. That there's too many games, and how can anybody survive when there's massive amounts of games? People were trying to. So 7 people watching now. Excellent. I think that narrative is sort of, how do you call it? Not entirely the entire picture. Because just going on, there's too many games. We're all failing because there's too much competition, and this is true. So I looked it up last week, and in 2022, the amount of you're in for a rant. It's going to be a bit of a rant. I've got the sniffles, and I'm not so it's going to be whatever it is. So, but do ask questions, and let's have a conversation. But so the number of games in Next Fest in 2022 was about 700 or 800, and last month in October, it was 3,000 plus games in Next Fest. So yeah, that is kind of scary. Even for me by myself, I go, fuck. And there's some great games among those 3,000, like a lot of great games. And that is intimidating. And I think that's in a sense scary. But I also saw this statistic a while back from Simon Carlos from Game Discovery Company, who said there's also more games than ever making like 500,000 on Steam. So it's not like there's fewer successes. So the successes are growing. There's just a lot more people vying for attention. So that is, but I must be honest, it's the least thing I worry about, because there's a lot of low quality games in that, a lot of hobbyist stuff, lots of first attempts, and I think that why I sometimes to talk about is that there's this narrative. It's about marketing, about visibility. It's about standing out from the crowd and becoming more hard. And it's discoverability is the main problem in indie development, as an indie. And I think I think honestly you can't fix that, because there's going to be more and more. Now it's 3,000. Next year there'll be 6,000 games. At some point there'll be 10,000 games, because people want to make games. It's a creative outlet, and they want to be famous, and they want to get rich, or they want people to play what they create. And it's a lot of fun to do. And tools are getting better. So I don't think discoverability, solving that, I know one person is trying to solve it by having an AI influencer that automatically generates content for every game released. It's kind of funny, but I don't believe that we can solve it that way. But so, and I think this has been going on for far too long. But there's other trends also. So that's one trend that's happening, where I'm sometimes worried about indie development, talking to people, figuring out how can you survive. The other thing that's happening is that someone turned it into a GameStar article. I say something on Twitter, but I do believe that everybody's earning less. Well, you can see that today, right now, because I'm not Concord, which was a flop, but now Lego Horizon. I mean, my last game on Steam sold more than Lego Horizon is doing on Steam at the moment. That's a decent game. There's something going on where before, if you had 5 years ago, this is how it feels to me. If people had hits, there's always hits. Fine. But that's just a single digit percentage of the best games. And the games beneath that, good games, usually made some money. They made a survivable amount because they were good, and they were, let's call it, moderate hits. And if you had like a big studio out game that wasn't shit, it basically was guaranteed to be a moderate hit. You know, it wouldn't trash like an indie can crash with 0 reviews or 50 user reviews on Steam, like 5,000 copies. I think that that was sort of the feeling like 5 or 10 years ago. There was money to be made, and even that's horrific selling 10,000 or 50,000 copies, but that was attainable. But now you're seeing big platforms like Sony or just big studios release games, and they're doing indie level numbers, like selling 50,000. Paradox had a number of games. Uh, I can look up the numbers for Millennia, but I think it launched at the same day as Bulwark, and it did like 3 times as well as me. But that's Paradox. That's a company I think with a value of over €1 billion. I my shitty solo dev self did 1/3 of that in sales on Steam on the same launch day. That's ridiculous. So it means that for me, that I think the failure level is much lower now than it's ever been. Where if you don't go viral, if you're like a moderate success, or you're a hidden gem, there's the possibility that you will earn very little. I saw a tweet yesterday from Jorg Diddle, where he said, "Oh, I heard about this game with 40,000 wishlists, and the publisher said it only made $20,000 US." I don't think that's entirely true. I think maybe that was the publisher revenue part. If you look, I think I have some skepticism that it's actually that. It's just in conversation things get exaggerated. But let's say it made 100,000. A published game that had 40,000 wishlists, making 100,000 net revenue, and that gets divvied up between the publisher and the developer costs and stuff, and what's left, is 20,000 for the publisher and 20,000 for the developer, assuming it's 50-50, is outrageous. That's quite a lot of wish lists. That is probably quite a lot of marketing as well that represented that. So I think that is scary to see that games can fail, not completely, but really drop off the map in how algorithmic stores like Steam work. So that is something that's also happening. So there's more games, but everybody's feeling it. So there's not enough market for all these big AAA games as a service games, because everybody's already in Roblox or Battlefield or whatever the game they're in, or Fortnite. There's not enough, space for every contender. We had 5 space horror games coming out or announced 5 years back. Only 2 came out, and it didn't do super well. So there is a lot of competition going on, and people aren't spending because the post-COVID slump and stuff. But I think that's just here to stay. Is that people, if you fail, you're going to make a lot less money, and the cushion is a lot harder, and that's going to make it harder for publishers and people to invest in getting games made. Well, game series, I think that's the word we're going to talk about next. So I think things are fairly, it's very harsh out there, and a lot of friends of mine with small indie studios or medium-sized indie, I've seen a lot of people go, how do you call it, shuttered studios. I think Me from Desperados, and that pirate game they did, big studio, beautiful, successful studio, they just called it quits. The Awesome Nuts guys quit, or no, they went bankrupt. And so there's a string of studios that no longer exist, with layoffs like League of Geeks, or studios that we have a term for it now. It's called hibernation. It's when a game studio, an indie studio says, okay, we've got 20 people on payroll, but we still have old games that's selling. It's enough to support the lifestyle of the owners. We're not making enough money to sustain the business. It's bankruptcy. That means everybody loses everything and it goes to debtors. Or we hibernate, we pay off everybody while we still have money, give them good severance, try to get them out the door as kindly, and then everything survives, and the owners or investors get some of that revenue without having to support the weight of a studio. So if your game is still going to make $500,000 over the next 2 years, you can't support 20 salaries. It doesn't seem like you'll have another hit to support more. Then you go into hibernation. You basically fire everybody, pay them off nicely, and wait it out, and farm whatever revenues there. You're just gonna invest it in yourself and not in making future games. So I've seen so many stories about that. So when on Reddit, when you post this, and people go, no, indies are doing great, I don't think that's the entire story. I think some indies are doing great because hits always exist, and AA is failing in a way. So there are more successful indies, but there's also a lot more failures, and there's a lot of non-starters. So we talked about general having more games out there. Now we're getting into that that it is getting harder. And I'm not even going into funding, because I don't believe you should get funding if you can, because I'm a solo dev. I pay for myself, and then I'm going to get a better deal at the end. And ideally, you want to self-publish. Let's be honest. Nowadays, there's not much money there's not enough meat on the bone for a publisher to take half and the funding. So if you can work up to a level where you're just by yourself, fucking self-publish. The other thing that's happening is what's happening with the revenue, where the industry's sort of feeling tighter, is games as a service is eating up a lot of money. But back catalog is the term that's going around recently. You might have seen it on like Bellador News or whatever. It means that when I want to play a Total War game and I go on Steam, I can buy the latest Total War game for what, $50 and then $20 or $30 worth of DLC. Or I can buy a Total War game from 5 years ago for $4.99 and buy all the DLC for $15. And that is back catalog. The older games are now just as good as the newest games. There's so many games where you can go, if you haven't played that, it's still a great game. And part of that is 15, 20 years ago, every next generation of games was radically prettier or better or more innovative or had newer physics or had bigger open worlds. But now it's more or less the same. I need to watch a Digital Foundry video that zooms in. Oh, look, the reflections are much crisper now. To see the generational difference between, a mid-console generation refresh and, between the PlayStation Pro and it's basically the same fucking visuals. Those games there's no, the technical progress has come to a crawl. It's not even relevant. Because we figured out what people want, we like how to game, and we can do whatever the fuck we want, With DLSS, you don't even have to optimize your game, you just throw in the raw graphics, and it runs like shit, but AI will save you. So, I'll get it. Okay, let me, about self-publishing. So, back catalogs is where we're just buying a lot of older games. And I saw this study on Spotify where it said 85% of the songs played on Spotify are just old fucking songs. It's just everybody listening to fucking Fleetwood Mac. Not just I do it. So I still listen to the same shit when I was 20. I try to listen to new music, but it is a fraction of what I consume. And games are going to be the same way. So that means that if you come out with a new indie game nowadays, you are fucked in many ways. No, that's what they're doing. They're abandoning optimization because you have a studio, assets are coming in from China and Malaysia. They're getting in, you make sure it looks nice. The art directors are happy. You can chuck it together, throw in some fantastic ray tracing, and then you add DLSS. And then, to make it run. Because no game with all that stuff is running on modern hardware or modern console hardware. You need upsampling and AI upsampling. So there's some optimization, but it's people really. I tried to play Star Wars Outlaws. It's a wonderful game, but I'm looking at this noisy, upscaled mess in the horizon. It's not. It's different than games crisp fucking game rendering from 3 years ago. But that's off-topic rant. So there's all these forces that are going to make new games. It's going to be so much harder to release amongst the 3,000 games at Next Fest and then be the one that hits that 500 user reviews in the first week or whatever the limit is to be successful and get repeat sales over and over again. So a single game launch is going to be harder and harder. And then before I could talk about self-publish, because who knows? When you I forgot what I was going to say. Too many lines of thought. When you go to Next Fest, it's like 3,000 games. So the other factor that's affecting how you're going to survive as an indie is that media and it includes streamers, are now clickbait based. That they're algorithm based. That means when everybody's talking about how shit Dragon Age looks, or that it has top surgery scars, that is all over the news, and it's all everybody talks about. I make this jokes when Manor Lords came out, my game came out, but another 10 fucking great city builds came out in the 2 months around it. That did recent sales, were on the front page of Steam. Nobody can remember those because everybody can remember, oh yeah, Manor Lords, because everybody was talking about fuck. So it's a click based, and everybody talks about the same thing because that's what what gets the clicks. And something fresh is gonna get an article or an interview with someone like me on Eurogamer gets a few thousand views, might give me 50 wish lists. It's not. It's people that what that means is that when you go viral, you go big. When you are Belletro, millions, fantastic. But everything beneath it is not survivable on media exposure. Which brings us to Nicola's question. So how difficult is it to self-publish and get recognized? Well, self-publishing is super fucking easy. You go on Steam, you pay the money, you get some tax shit sorted. It's annoying. But once you're done, you can launch your game. So easiest thing in the world. You can even go on Twitch and do it in half the time. If you have a game, getting self-published technically it's never been easier. And that's why there's a golden age, because amongst those thousands of people who are going to fail, there's going to be, let's say, among the tens of thousands of new games every year, there's going to be a few thousand fucking great games or really original ideas, and they might survive. And a lot of great ideas will fail. So it's self-publishing is... the funny thing is the people I see that surviving, there are even people who self-publish are complaining. And I think it's gotten to the point where if you had a good publisher, you could make more money. And things were easier because you can't do everything. You get more. Like 5 years ago, I would have said, or even 2 years ago, if you had a publisher, it would reduce your risk of that utter failure moment where you only sell 5,000 units because there's another 10 people invested, in making sure that doesn't happen. So you reduce the risk of failing, and you would make more money, and they would pay for themselves and them some. I think that's not always true anymore. I think the market is, there's just not enough, and that's not the publisher's fault. There's just not enough revenue there for that many, for everybody to get paid all the time. So self-published, the people I see who self-publish are now sometimes making more. I go, wow, you're doing better, because once you've got that machine going, you're releasing games under your own label. You get most of the money, and once then you have your own, and it takes how easy it's just going to take years. I think the one lesson I was trying to explain on to every time I see a post on Reddit that goes, oh my god, I spent 7 years making my game and it failed utterly, here's my lessons. I think the one lesson you needed to learn is you shouldn't spend 7 years making a game. So because you can expect to fail. So every game you make is and this is actually very old knowledge. I don't think the publisher name, except Devolver and Annapurna, or maybe Rob Mayer, there are a few publishers that are super into strategy games or super niche that do count for something. If you get published by Paradox, you get a huge audience, and when they do a Steam sale you're in with the big guys. So there are, but there's smaller strategy publishers that have their own audience. So that if you want a publisher, find a publisher that brings their own audience to the table, that has their own, that's the only thing that counts. Do you have an audience? Do you own it? A Hooded Horse is a good example. People buy Hooded Horse. All their stuff is the flavor of the day. Just like Devolver sort of was a couple of years ago. So yeah, that counts for something a big, but they can only do so many games a year. There's not. It's like going viral. It's that lottery ticket. I honestly believe is that you shouldn't plan for viral success, because it's not going to happen to you. It's never happened to me in that sense. I'm always have to work hard and make niche games with fucked up interfaces and rant on fucking live streams without knowing the fuck I'm doing. So I don't. I think it's a lottery ticket. Devolver, I don't know. You know, we can gossip about Devolver, but they're a publicly listed company. But yeah, I could say that they had a few. They had that sniper game that didn't go off fantastically. So yeah, even they are not a guarantee for success. So it's in a sense there's so how difficult is it? Um, expect to fail. And once you expect to fail, the solution, because that's what I've been working on or thinking about for the last week. So what's the solution to all of this? You know, we can talk individual things. There's always people, oh yeah, it's marketing. Oh, you got to market more. But I saw someone tweet today. It's like, I don't know who it was. Maybe Rami, one of the big indie guys, said, telling people to market more. It's like, it's telling a drowning man to breathe better. It's you know, you can only market so much in such a market. You know, there's the limited. Yeah, exactly. It doesn't work unless you're super viral. So I realized that after the Falconeer, because it did great on console, but didn't do great on Steam. And I went, there's got to be a way to figure this out, and people have figured it out. You know, and I hate to say it because I hate fucking mobile games, but you can look at mobile games; they've already been shitified, and people are still surviving there. And what's you know, there's survival strategies you can employ that are just solid business strategies that will raise your chances. There's no guarantees, but you know, the simplest survival strategy: make many games, and some will do good enough to carry them all or carry the other ones, and you will get better. So that's the first thing when people complain, I spent 7 years. Don't spend 7 years if you're just starting. People say make small games, and I've said about it. It's not about, you know, making small games. People misunderstand that advice. So make small games. Now, I don't make small games. Release games often is the same advice, you know. And that might mean make small games, but release often or release quickly, because then you know if something is, you know, a success. So spending 7 years is a failure of validating that your game wasn't being, because you could know that really relatively fast. There's this story about a Polish publisher who goes around and they'll give you 10,000 euros to make a trailer for your game. They'll launch a trailer on their channels or a show or whatever. They'll give you some money to make the trailer, make it nice, based off some prototype or whatever. If the trailer makes 10,000 wishlists in its first month, they'll fund everything you want. Then you've got a deal. And people go, oh, that's horrible, that's horrible. And being a realist, that's how mobile game companies work. And I think that's how the people who are going to make a lot of money on Steam within this masses of things will have to work. If you want to survive, you'll need to validate as early as possible. So the idea that you make the entire game, then release it, and then see if it's successful, that's going to have to die. You know, it's going to have to go away. The idea that as a developer you keep it a secret until you can, you know, do a surprise release, nonsense. You go out there, you make something that is, how do you call it, fun, and it looks polished. It's just not the entire game. And sometimes you call it first light, but let's call it a really short demo or a trailer, and you put it out there and see if people respond. And if they don't respond, and unless it's your art game or you have a lot of faith or you're an idiot like me, then you don't make it. You make something else that gets traction. So any preference in terms of technology and platform making small enough games to release frequently? So and again, it's not about small games. It's just validating often. So that means I would say in the terms of that, your best answer is Adobe After Effects or Final Cut is make a great fucking trailer. And then you're seeing that in Next Fest because Valve is changing Next Fest so that trailers are more important than live streams. So they trialed it in the last Next Fest. Your trailer is now more important. And that's actually really insightful of them, because it gives people a chance from, we'll make a trailer, we'll fake it a little bit, we'll see if there's excitement. And you can release your trailer on, another fest if you have a demo. But that's the way, you got to get your excitement or your measure or your validation as quickly as possible. And sure, if you're just starting, that doesn't mean you have 50,000 people on Twitter that go, oh, your trailer. But you can release it on Reddit and see, well, okay, this one did 50 likes and the other one did no likes. That might be telling you something, that it's not special, or, that's, they're not getting data is also data. So I think Unity or Unreal doesn't really fucking matter. Whatever you invest in is what you'll be stuck with for 10 years. And it'll be fine, because those engines are all fucking amazing. And the deals are fairly the same. So the advice, I'd say, is not really small game, but release often and early. And what you release, so it doesn't have to be a game, as long as you can get people to see, oh, this is nice. Oh, people are excited, let's continue. And then there's still failure options where you don't deliver on the excitement. That happens also. But at least it's, it's crossing a filter, a barrier, a leap, something you have to jump across to get to a place where you can publish something. I think when you are a solo dev and you don't have children and you don't have responsibilities, and to go back to that self-publishing, and you can do or you have a day job, that's going to be the main path, where some people will stumble upon something, some small prototype, and it will get traction, and some of those will become, the next Vampire Survivors. And especially if you not just validate, but release often and understand how to do, marketing isn't. Sorry, I have the sniffles. Yeah, my nose is fucking. Marketing is required. It's not a savior. It's required. Having a great game is required. Having great visuals is required. So once you have all these things, you can figure out how to be successful. So that's the small games advice. The thing I did, someone said, hey, what game are you making next in the Falconeer series? That's the other one. So when during the Falconeer, I figured out, so how can you survive if there's this many games and your chances of success aren't, even remotely likely, is that you need to build a strategy, that you need to build upwards, that every game you release is a brick in the road you're building to success. And however small, however failure, if it's not carrying the weight, if it's not contributing to your progress, that's the true failure. So in that sense, I looked at the Falconeer and went, okay, what did people like? People love the world and the world building. That, not everybody loves old retro style air combat, but people love the fucking world building and the world. So I thought, okay, that's the meaningful thing. And that, it made me feel like a fantasy author. And that's someone, and at some point, so talking about fantasy authors, as we're ranting, somewhere in the last 10 years, fantasy authors went from trilogies or even single books to 12 parters or 16 parters or indefinite series. If I now go to the fantasy bookstore, there is these books. Oh, this is, and I totally lose track, because this author is part 7 of the Angels and Dust series. Okay, did I read that? I don't know. I need like a website for that, I guess. Why did they do that? Why did authors and mass fantasy and sci-fi go into these long numbered series? And it's not that Robert Jordan did great with The Wheel of Time. It's that it makes money. Because what happens when you're halfway through Game of Thrones book 4 and book 5 is shit? Or it's not that great. Well, you buy it and then you sort of go through it, because probably number 6 will be great again, and you're waiting for the stuff that was foreshadowed in number 3. You're invested. So that's why they do long series, to keep you invested and keep you harvesting that investment. That's it sounds cynical, but it's just survival for authors who have it worse than game devs, because people don't read. Um, so series, and that's why I decided, okay, I'm just gonna stick to this Falconeer universe, and that's where Bulwark came to. It's like, okay, let's not make this genre. I like making little towns. Let's make like a town builder. Townscaper was awesome. That's the inspiration. But in this bleak universe, and I can keep the people that become fan. I can reward them with new content in this universe they like, uh, and I can use. And it turns out, once you do that, you can use all kinds of tricks. Previously, the area for major publishers. Because if you go to the store page for the Falconeer, the Steam page for the Falconeer, or the Bulwark even. Yeah. So here's the store page for Bulwark, and you can see it looks like something from Paradox, because you buy the Falconeer Chronicles, that's $19. Then there's a bundle that has everything. It's on discounts for $22. And there's another bundle that has that has a little less for $15, still cheaper than the main game. So why not buy that bundle? And then there's a digital deluxe. I think that's, I don't know. One has all the Falconeer DLC, and one has all the Bulwark DLC. And that is bundling. And it means that if you click on this, you get all the Falconeer stuff, and you've also bought my other game for cheaper than that. So what does that leave me? Traffic to the Falconeer. And it's a better deal. So people take this deal and not necessarily wait for another summer sale. So you basically your and that's why the little supporter DLC is cheap. It's just to keep those bundles going. That is sort of working on I'm not the biggest success in the world, but it's working quite well, and it gives all these advantages to survive. So here's the Falconeer Chronicles collection. I think this is what's keeping is so that we're going to back catalog is to create your own back catalog, because the fun thing is with back catalogs as a problem is that a company like Paradox, which wants to release the next Europa Universalis, is competing with their old fantastic games, which is depressing their sale. But they're still selling that old game and new DLC for it. Yeah, so it's nice to have you aboard. I don't know. Code complexity is topic for today's rant, but we can talk maybe at the end a little bit about it. So make your own fucking back catalog, and I think that's actually instead of saying we need to fix game discoverability for indies, you can fix it yourself by creating a franchise and building on every game. So when you get into this, and that's literally what I'm doing. So it's part because I love this universe, it's part because people love this universe, but it's partly because it's the only way I think I could think of to survive, is make sure I create my own audience that it isn't coming for the next fest, but it's coming for my new game in this world. And in a small way, it's just like having my own Patreon, but actually you're not subscribing, you're buying my games, and then you're buying into hopefully future games as well. So that is what I'm doing. So that's why I'm on Reddit also is explained to people. That's a very basic business. People do well with small games as well, but it's basic business sense. Validate often and quickly to make sure you're not, blindly investing money and time on a game that won't succeed, and make sure it's all connected and helping each other out. I think then, on top of that, how hard is it to do that? It just takes time, and it takes a strategy, and it takes, building upon building and building, and having some luck along the way, certainly. But you're reducing your risk massively by building up, and sticking. I'm using the single universe, but or sticking to the same genre, or somehow bring that universe to come for you, the creator, or your franchise, other than just. Sorry, I was on Steam still. So yeah, that's what I've been talking about for a little bit. It's just that once you think of it, it's very simple. Do what the big guys do, and build upwards. Make sure every game is part of your universe so that people fall in love with it. That's a good question. Would you choose another genre if you're starting again today? Yes, I would actually. Okay, so the Falconeer is very dear to me as a game, and it's brought me super more for its artistic merit than for its popularity as a game. It's a retro. It's the game for my childhood. It's Crimson Skies or TIE Fighter with giant birds, with philosophical musings. I don't think I could have made anything else. So I wouldn't change that because it's special and it has an emotional resonance that makes it an actual work of art. Whereas Bulwark is a much more commercial. It's still a work of art in that sense, but it's not. It's not bleeding out of it. It is something I wanted to. It was intellectually challenging, not emotionally. So, but from a business analyst standpoint, saying, yeah, that was a dumb mistake. I took a genre that was dead, and it was dead for a reason. Fantasy air combat or arcade aim combat. It's been surpassed by FPSs that have flying in them, and that's the control scheme, and that's the it's the difference between Elite Dangerous and what's that game? Star Citizen. Star Citizen is just when you're flying, it's just another aspect of the first-person experience, rather than a stick flying thing. So yeah, that really hurt. I think the main mistake there with Falconeer was that I didn't focus on Steam first, but focused on console first. But again, then it was a launch start. I don't know. You can't change the past, but picking the right genre. It's interesting. Even with Bulwark, when did it start? 2022, I guess. I started Bulwark, and City Builders and Townscaper would just come out or was still in development, and went, wow, this is interesting. And City Builders, I love fortress building. It was such a natural fit, and it was still sort of underserved. But man, every indie on earth jumped on that genre. Now it's overflowing with city builders, and maybe strategy games, RTS games might be the next big thing where everybody jumps on. I think, but it is important. I think Bulwark on Steam did the sales the Falconeer did in 4 years in 4 days. So it's a massive jump in success on Steam, partially because it's a more commercial genre. I think it's more the advice is pick a genre. If you do that is very hard for others to follow. So, I did a city builder, casual, whatever you call Bulwark, but I added all kinds of strategy in 4X bits, and I added everything I could because I could reuse that from the Falconeer. Another benefit of staying in it, I added all the combat, all the AI controls, so I could have a little bit of light RTS. That makes it harder to repeat. That makes it harder for anything to be Bulwark. So, to have a, Townscape or Tiny Glade-esque, experience, but there's also combat. Nobody's going to offer that for a long time because it's very hard to do. But, it's just combining the old stuff I had lying around, and that's just playing to your strength. Sorry, I'm in my mid-30s actively transitioning into game dev. Yeah, well, there's no better time than to do it. No problem. My first success in game was at 38. I'd been in the industry for a while, but yeah. So I would advise small projects for people, but launch early. And so there's this creative need for anybody, because a lot of people get into game dev because it's a creative outlet, and there's a lot of passion there. And they want to hold it too close to themselves. They don't want people to play it because it's not ready. And it's not ready yet. It's not ready. And apparently that can take years and years. But that's an instinct you need to kill. As soon as it's playable, have people play it. Every dev ever that's been successful have said it. Have people play your game and they'll tell you if it's shit or good. Magic. So I think if we're gonna wind it up to the end, unless there's more questions, I think the way to survive this, I think the industry is maturing. There might be some sort of plateau there at some point, but there's never going to be breathing space like old-time indies that were successful 10 years ago. Figuring like Jonathan Blow saying, "Oh no, it's everything's selling so much less now." Yeah, welcome to a mature market where there's lots on offer and there's lots of competition and people can only spend that buck once. And how do you survive in a mature market space? By making mature market strategies, by building up and sticking to your genre and growing your audience so that they come from you. That's very validating early. That's very simple and cutting out as many of the middlemen as you can. And just by virtue of, how do you call it? Perseverance and sticking around and making game after game after game, you will get to a point where you make some money. I think that's it, and and those are business strategies for any industry. But I think we didn't need them in indie games, or people didn't think they need them, but we do need them, and they'll help you survive. So that's the positive argument. It is what it is. You adapt and you survive. So that's, I think, 10 minutes of me stumbling, but maybe some good content in there. Any questions before we'll wind down? How many of you are there? No more questions. Well, 13 people watching. I'm gonna sign off, go to bed. Well, the question someone asked about the reality of code complexity these days. Yeah, I can imagine that. Fuck Scrum and Agile and all that. There's this website called Programming Motherfucker. It's might be 15 years old. And it's like, look it up, Programming Motherfucker. It's really funny. If you dislike modern development, people were disliking all that shit people are still talking about today, 15 years ago. I like Programming Motherfucker. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for being there. I hope it was insightful. I don't do this too often. I might do it occasionally. Let me know if it was useful, and well, see you around.